So Games Workshop have finally put the leaks and previews together and fully unveiled all the models in the new Horus Heresy launch box. Hello and welcome back to Allspec Tactics, where today I thought we'd catch up on some rather big news from earlier in the week, which is Games Workshop officially unveiling all the models in their new launch box for the Horus Heresy. This one's been strongly suspected for a really good while now. We did see all those blurry pictures from a while back, though just this week some clearer ones came out of the same photo, and Games Workshop responded by basically revealing all the miniatures in full. It's usually pretty good fun to see an entire new box of miniatures come out all like this, and I must admit this set does seem to be on a bigger scale to virtually anything that they've put out before. Indomitors was really quite a big meaty box set all by itself, but the amount of big chunky miniatures in this is pretty impressive. You get the 2 Praetors in the centre of the box, 4 units of the Mark 6 Space Marines, the ones with the beaky helmets, no less than 10 of the Cataphracta Terminators, a Contemptor Dreadnought, an enormous Spartan, and most likely a fair few more Horus Heresy things that are a bit more devoted to the actual game itself, the main rulebook, dice templates, and other accessories. I don't think that they intended for the image to come out quite this early. I think their Horus Heresy previews will largely be focusing on this thing. They've already got that scheduled in at the end of Warhammer Fest. That's going to be on Saturday next week. I'm sure we'll see a fair few more details from the box there, and perhaps a few teasers of things to come. There are rumours of things like plastic Leviathans and Sakaran battle tanks out and about, so it's perfectly possible we could see some of those. Now we do have it confirmed that there's quite so much stuff coming in the box. I do feel that that other price rumour of around £240 or $400 could potentially be plausible. Unlike things like the Indomitors box, I don't believe that most of these are monopose kits. It's likely just the characters that are fairly monoposy. I think everything else is basically fully fledged plastic kits. Everything from the beaky Space Marines to the Contemptor Dreadnought and the Spartan. Even if you just went by 40k points cost for all this, it would equate to around about 2,000 points in a game, one full army in one box. And to be honest, in Games Workshop terms, £240 for an entire Space Marine army is actually a fairly remarkably good deal, never mind if you could actually get it reduced somewhere like a discount retailer. If you didn't want it for Heresy and you were thinking about reselling the book, I'm sure that could even save you a little bit more. I do think though that even though it might be a reasonable deal in Games Workshop terms for an army of this size, it still will be a whole lot to pay all at once. While you might be able to justify picking up individual miniatures on any month, it is a pretty crazy amount of money to be spending on model soldiers and a level above what Games Workshop has typically asked for things before. I've no doubt it'll be still popular amongst a lot of people. Maybe some others will be picking up the units individually. I'm sure it will dissuade some people though. The price is perhaps of particular interest to me though, as I will be giving away 2 of the boxes as soon as it's out, so I'll just briefly run through the channel giveaway before we take a look at what we know about the models so far, and in particular focus on this new Contemptor. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, I do some channel giveaways each month, posting out some big model kits to people who help support the channel, either on Patreon or via social media. I do the draws on the start of each month, and there's 2 equal ways to enter. You can either support the channel on Patreon for any amount whatsoever, that gives you automatic entry to the draws each month, or you can enter completely for free via helping out the channel on social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the Facebook page which is down in the video description, and then to enter the draw on the 1st of June with a picture of any 40k miniature that you own or any other imagery, along with your name and the date, that bit to help defeat Facebook bots. I then put all the entries together, 1 entry per person, and I draw it with a random number generator and announce the results on a channel update on the 4th of each month. We'll shortly be doing the one for the Chaos Knight box giveaway. Again, that one will be dispatched just as soon as it releases. I know for this one, at time of recording, we don't have the release date 100% confirmed. Games Workshop's big preview is the 7th of the month, so I think it is somewhat likely it's going to drop this month. Hopefully it will be all ready for postage in early June, but of course if not and the release date is a bit after that, then I'll post it just as soon as my order comes in. In any case, I'll certainly be running similar giveaways every month. This one's looking like it could be a particularly big one though. I certainly wouldn't be against it if Games Workshop decides to let this one go for a surprisingly low price. If any of that's of interest to you, the Patreon page and the Facebook page are both links down in the video description. In any case, returning our focus back to the miniatures, let's look through all the box bit by bit. First up we have these 2 Legion Praetors. They're painted Imperial Fist and Sons of Horus, but of course you could dedicate them both to the same Legion. The Imperial Fist one has a great big sword and a Volkite pistol, certainly rocking his beaky helmet in style, and he could be a pretty decent base for a 40k captain model perhaps. The other chap is a bit more hulking, armed with a massive great big power axe. I feel like the Imperial Fist model probably has the better pose going on of the two, though they're both suitably ornate looking Space Marine characters. Then we have the Beaky Legion Tactical Squad, the Mark 6 Armour Marines and Bolters Resplendent with bayonets. Not a lot of alternate war gear options, seeing as they're Legion squads, they don't typically use heavy weapons and special weapons mixed in, but the Sergeant does get a plasma pistol and power sword as you can see here, and there are still a few upgrades that you can give the other Marines. The Sergeant will also be able to take a Lightning Claw, again as you can see pictured, and a Power Fist. The Marines can be armed with chain bayonets, as you can see on the Death Guard model on the bottom left here, and there'll be some bits for some communication and scanner type upgrades, things like a Nuncio Vox augury scanner and a Legion Vexilla icon. They do all seem to be a little bit upscaled, quite close to Primaris Marines more so than standard Firstborn, which is quite cool to have slightly better proportions, but does mean that they could just look a little bit off if they're being fielded alongside previous Firstborn models. Next up, and pretty much dominating the box with its sheer size, is the Spartan. It's been very cool to see an enormous Space Marine Lord of War reimagined in plastic, and I must admit pretty surprising that they'd put something quite this massive in a launch box. Typically they tend to be at least a little bit reserved in terms of big vehicles and things, and usually have them separate. It's truly an imposing beast though, with quad las cannons on either side, and heavy bolters on the hull which you can replace with yet more las cannons or heavy flamers, and some pintle mounted options for a combi bolter and a Volkite combi weapon, crewed by this gunner up top, who doesn't appear to be following the current beaky trend and has gone for an earlier mark of armour. The Spartan does have 40k rules as well, costing over 400 points, perhaps a little bit niche and underpowered within the Forge World compendium, but at least it's a land vader that isn't going to have all its firepower locked up just because someone manages to tag it in combat. Next we have the 10 Terminators, Cataphractide Terminators, that do appear to be from the current kit. Earlier on I was speculating whether or not they'd get redone as well, along with the standard Marines to upscale them a bit, but to be fair I can see why Games Workshop wouldn't bother with that. The current kit is perfectly functional, it's really quite a recent one as Games Workshop's plastics go, so it does seem likely that this will just represent the current multi-part plastic kit in the box with all the rest. Could mean that when the box does drop, there could be a fair few of these going second hand. If you did want to pick up a whole bunch of Terminators to use with the Armour of Contempt, then these guys might be in bigger supply than normal. Finally, last but by no means least, we have the fairly freshly unveiled new plastic Contemptor Dreadnought, an update on the old kit, which is one of the ones that Games Workshop I think had garnered the most criticism for. While it was cool to see a Contemptor Dreadnought in plastic, the old one did have its issues. Pretty much a monopose model with only a couple of war gear options out of the many that are available to the Contemptors, and it just generally felt like a fairly low quality model for something that went for the same price as a regular Dreadnought. This guy looks like he is going to be a fitting update though, quite plain and brutal looking as befits the Heresy, but really quite a lot more in-depth design in the kit. The vast majority of the joints are posable and can be sculpted the way that you want them to. And from the Warhammer community preview, it looks like you'll have the choice of really quite a lot of weapons to arm it with. There's at least a las cannon, auto cannon, multi-melter and heavy bolter, as well as secondary weapon choices for the power fist, and even the option for whether or not you want taloned fingers on the power fist, depending on how spiky and heretical your legion's feeling. Even with really quite a lot of options though, it does put some of the guns for the Contemptor in a bit of an interesting place. Forge World appear to have taken down the vast majority of their Contemptor weapons, including the recently very notorious twin Volkite culverins, which at least at the moment are likely not to be in the box with this guy I think. I feel it's kind of unlikely that they'd stop supporting the rules for those guns that have sold for really quite a long time, but at the same time if they don't sell miniatures for them, they typically tend to move the rules to Legends after a while. I must admit it would feel like a bit of a troll move on Games Workshop's part to have the really niche Volkite weapons that became one of the strongest Space Marine firepower options suddenly be made completely redundant. I guess only time will tell on that part. I'd be very surprised if they change any of the rules for 40k on this guy's release, though I guess the options from this nice new plastic one might well make his appearance in the next updated Codex Space Marines. In general though, it's really quite nice to see an updated Contemptor. This guy seems like a far nicer model to have going forwards. So all in all, it's really quite a spectacular bundle of Space Marines there. It'll be interesting to see what else they have to say about it next Saturday on the Warhammer Fest previews, and I'll certainly try and cover any interesting news here on the channel. I'm hoping that we might see some other model previews. Leviathans or Sakaran battle tanks could be really cool. If you'd like to see that, feel free to subscribe to Allspec Tactics. Finally, I'd quickly just like to mention the channel's Patreon page, which is linked down in the video description. It is what allows me to make these videos quite so regularly, so if you are enjoying a lot, any support is enormously appreciated. As I talked about earlier, I do try and give as many rewards to channel patrons, including big giveaways each month, as well as seeing certain videos early, and regular votes as to what sort of things come next on the channel. If any of that interests you, or you'd just be interested in entering in for the Horus Heresy box set, feel free to check out the links to the Patreon or the Facebook page down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.